Hey everyone, Brian from Madness and Motive. With Charlie Adelson in prison for life and his mother, Donna Adelson, in jail, indicted, and awaiting trial, attention has now shifted to Harvey and Wendi Adelson. Will they be arrested? And if so, when will that happen? If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I've focused on Harvey before. In my opinion, I think there is a lot to show that he at least had knowledge of the plot to kill Dan Markel. And I think with some reasonable assumptions, it can be shown that he was likely involved in it as well. Today, I've created a mock probable cause affidavit so we could see what that might look like, explore the entire story, and see how Harvey fits into that. After walking through that document together, I've also created a bonus resource to visualize the entire timeline and, of course, highlight Harvey's potential knowledge and involvement. Be sure to stick around till the end of the video for that. And without further delay, let's get into it. So we start off with the title, and I definitely do want to read this because it's going to remind me to put a disclaimer out there. Theory of offense and mock probable cause affidavit. And I was sneaky and put the word mock really small there, but I want to be clear that this is just a mock doc, okay? So it's not a real affidavit, it's not an accusation or anything like that. Everything in here is created by me, it's just my opinion, and everyone deserves a fair trial. So I want to get that out there. But let's get into this document. I'm going to link this in the video description so you can open it up and check it out. And one thing I want to show you, if you're not used to Google Docs, is on the left side, you can click this right here and it will show the document outline. So I'm going to go ahead and keep this open as we run through this, okay? So the affidavit starts off like Charlie's, like Donna's. This one is modeled after those. And basically, it's going to theorize probable cause to believe that Harvey Adelson had knowledge of the plot to murder Dan Markel. I sort of stopped at knowledge. I didn't mention involvement, just so it didn't come on too strong. But like I said, I think with some reasonable assumptions, you could show his involvement. So the document opens up and we're going to establish when the murder happened and that it did happen in this first paragraph here. The second paragraph, we're looking at Wendi's first and only interview with police, where she indicates that her parents were very angry at Markel, and she further suggested that someone could have arranged the murder thinking it would help her. So even in Wendi's own police interview, she kind of supports the motive that her parents would have to be involved in this kind of thing. She also goes on to tell investigators about the hitman joke that Charlie made, which involves, a television. Like buying a television would be cheaper than hiring a hitman. And that television reference becomes really important later on because it's part of the code speak between Donna and Charlie. Okay, so just moving through some of this initial information. Here I'm calling out the divorce and the desire to have Wendi and the kids relocated to South Florida, and the fact that it involved the whole family. So you can see here, emails, text messages, court records. These documents led to the conclusion that Wendi, her brother Charlie, and their parents, Harvey and Donna, intended to move Wendi and the two children, Ben and Lincoln, to South Florida after the divorce. The very next sentence is, Markel opposed the relocation, of course, and then the Leon County Circuit Judge Hobbs definitively rejected that request. So we've got the desire to relocate, we've got the rejection, and we're, still building motive here. Next, I'm calling out Donna's crazy emails that started occurring pretty soon after this relocation motion was rejected. And we've, of course, got that infamous $1 million offer. And there was going to be participation from each party in the family in this. So Donna and Harvey were going to pay 1/3. Wendi would be responsible for 1/3, and Charlie would be responsible for 1/3. So again, with this being Harvey's affidavit, I'm, connecting the dots and pointing out where Harvey is involved, and he is absolutely involved in this portion. And then continuing to follow the template of the other affidavits, I've put in some comments from Jeff Lacasse, where he pointed out Wendi confided in him about Charlie's serious inquiries into hiring a hitman. I put this one in because earlier it was referenced as a joke, but Jeff Lacasse said that it wasn't, discussion around it was not always a joke. So I think this was important to put in. Next, I establish that, Katie was dating Charlie right around the time that this was arranged and executed. I've got another paragraph in here focusing on Wendi's first and only interview with police, where, she verbalized the situation was very effed up, and she highlighted her parents' animosity toward Dan Markel. So what I'm making sure to do is get everything into this document that references parents and Harvey, because I believe while he was a quiet or maybe a quieter participant, he was right there all along. And I think if you look into the details and you pay attention to everything that's written and said, he pops out more than you might imagine. This paragraph here at the top is an addition that you won't see in the other affidavits. And this is from the police interview of Tamara Demko. And basically what I wanted to highlight here is her reports of unusual behavior from Wendi and her father, Harvey. That's a focus of her interview. I did a video on that, and I'll link that in the description, and you can easily find it on my channel. I did like a whole breakdown, organized it into sections, and this section was focusing on Tamara's intuition, which I think is really strong and seems to be quite accurate. And she doesn't just focus on the weird vibes she got from Wendi and Harvey. She also talks about getting an eerie feeling, thinking back on Wendi's departure during the divorce and how well planned it was, how well executed. I think she uses the word deftly executed. And she points out that it involved the entire family. And I think that's really notable because, in my opinion, when Wendi has a crisis, the family springs into action and they work together as a unit. That's an important thing to call out when you're trying to show Harvey's knowledge and involvement. The next section in, the overall introduction to this whole thing is focusing on Markel's memorial service and the fact that Tallahassee PD approached Wendi's parents, Harvey and Donna, for an interview. And they also, the next day, called Wendi for an interview. This is where she drops the call and then, never calls them back. From that point on, they could only communicate with her lawyer, which is her right, but it does seem to be, odd behavior. It's uncooperative. And all three parties, Harvey, Donna, and Wendi, they never contact police again. They blow them off, and they leave Tallahassee right after the memorial service, 2 days after it. I think this kind of behavior is notable, especially when we're trying to establish motive and, certain oddities or strange behaviors after the crime. Okay, so now in our outline, now we're getting into some of the major sections now that the introduction has been established. And they normally don't do this in an affidavit, but I do. I put subheadings in here, so it was, chopped up into sections for you, and you could kind of see how the whole thing is laid out and absorb the story that way. So here we've got the murder, and I'm not going to go over this in exhaustive detail. Again, this video is more focusing on Harvey's potential knowledge and involvement. So hopefully you've got some of the facts, squared away. And one thing I wanted to highlight, though, that I did put in here is before the murder. So The crime happens on July 18th, 2014. On July 1st, 2014, okay, so, just a little over 2 weeks before the murder happens, Garcia, so this is Sigfredo Garcia's, he's the gunman, his phone had contact with a cell phone registered to Harvey Adelson, the father of Charlie and Wendi Adelson. It goes on to talk about some communication attempts between Katie McBanois. She's the middle woman to this whole thing. She's the connective tissue between the Adelsons and, the Latin King gang members that committed this crime. But then it says, at 5:20 p.m., Garcia's cell phone made an attempt to call Harvey Adelson's phone, but the call was directed to voicemail. The document goes on to detail communications on the morning of July 18th. So we've got communication between Katie McBanois and the two perpetrators, Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. Again, he's the gunman. There's really not anything about Harvey here, but if you're interested in Wendi Adelson's potential involvement in this whole thing, I would encourage you to read through this carefully and look at the timestamps, look at the call durations, and ask yourself, does it make sense that her conversations were innocuous and yet all these other conspirators are chatting leading up to and after the crime was committed? The next section is the drop, or the money drop. Okay, so the crime has been committed and now it's time to pay those who carried out the hit. So basically this paragraph right here is talking about, Katie going over to Charlie's the night of July 18th. If we look at this section here, records from Charlie Adelson's iCloud reveal a message at 7:13 from Donna stating, "Call us ASAP." And I put in here that indicates Harvey's involvement in communications about the money drop. Because, to me, it's clear who the conspirators were. This is the night of the murder and the money drop is going to happen. Donna requests a call. And so, this is one of those reasonable assumptions. I think her and Harvey are at the house and they want to communicate with Charlie and organize this thing. When should we come over? The money is ready. At 8:59 p.m., Donna texts, "Outside your house." So in my opinion, she's there, she's got the money, and she is ready to do the drop. I didn't see this in any of the other affidavits, but I'm hoping there's a way law enforcement could use cell phones to show that, Harvey was there with her. But I don't have clarity on that, so I didn't include it in this document. Assuming that Donna and Harvey were at Charlie's, it looks like they were there for about an hour and a half, based on the fact that they arrived in Orlando, Florida at 1:25 in the morning. So they were probably there from 9 p.m. or, Charlie said that he was going to be there in 10 minutes. So maybe he got there at like 9:10, 9:15. They probably stayed till about 10:30, 10:45. And then they leave Miami and head to Orlando. They get there at 1:25 and then probably get a little sleep somewhere. And then they proceed to Tallahassee the next morning. So we're at the 19th now, a day after the crime was committed. So now that the hit has been carried out and the initial lump sum has been dropped off, it's time to set up continued payments. By the way, on the morning of the 19th, I think around 10 a.m. from what I can gather, Katie takes the money and she prepares to, disperse it to Luis Rivera and Sigfredo Garcia. So at this point in time, the machine is working. So post-homicide investigations uncovered that from September 2014, so murder happens in July, now we're in September of that same year, McBanois began receiving paychecks from the Adelson Institute. These paychecks were handwritten and signed by Donna Adelson. They were consistent in amount, totaling $407.58 every 2 weeks. These payments continued until at least April 2016. And again, this is odd because no real employment status could ever be established for Katie McBanois at the Adelson Institute. There's a lot more about money in here, like suspicious deposits and things like that. One thing I did call out in our bonus feature at the end of the video is that in the month following the murder, August, Katie McBanois deposited over $13,000 in cash. And that sort of signaled this suspicious monetary activity on her side. Along with these payments, there has been discussion about a number of gifts, like vacations and breast implants and things like that. I wanted to call out in this affidavit, McBanois was found in possession and use of a 2001 Lexus LS 430 sedan, initially registered to Harvey Adelson and formerly used by Charlie Adelson. On January 23, 2016, the car's title was transferred to McBanois, and she obtained a new license plate in her name. Vehicle records show the Lexus was sold to McBanois for $1,700. Next, we move to the bump. So this happened on April 19th, 2016. If you're not familiar with it, you can simply search on YouTube. Just type in the bump, Dan Markel, something like that. And you'll see some trial footage where Georgia is talking to the undercover agent that pulled this off. But essentially, what happened was an undercover agent approached Donna Adelson regarding Markel's murder. The agent presented a press release about the murder, requested $5,000, and gave a phone number for further contact. And this interaction led to wiretapping phone calls of Charlie and Donna. In the first call, Donna contacts Charlie and she tells him what happened. And Charlie asked if the matter involved him or others. And Donna says, well, probably both of us. Charlie requests clarification. And then she says again, probably the two of us. You probably have a general idea of what I'm talking about. The reason I bring this up is because I want to make it clear that these are two co-conspirators involved, in my opinion, in the plot to kill Dan Markel, and that's exactly what they're discussing. And that's going to become really important when we talk about Harvey later on. For example, here's the first thing I wanted to call out and something that I added to my mock affidavit. In the initial discussions between Donna and Charlie, they talk a lot about wanting to meet to discuss the bump, but doing it in a way where they're hiding it from Harvey. In my opinion, I think it's pretty fair to establish that they were doing this because he has very volatile emotional reactions to this kind of thing. And they want to see if they can handle it on their own, or at least get an understanding and a grip on the whole situation before they approach him about it. I think this shows that Harvey knows about the plot to kill Dan Markel, but he doesn't know about the bump. And the reason I think that is represented in this line right here. With Charlie's involvement in the plot to kill Dan Markel well established, there is a noticeable lack of conversation around telling Harvey the reason behind the bump, indicating that he may have been aware of the plot already. In other words, if Harvey had no knowledge of the plot to kill Dan Markel, that would be a really big thing to have to reveal to him. In my analysis of the wiretaps, there's no discussion about this. There's no planning. There's no asking each other, how are we going to approach Dad and tell him we were involved in the plot to kill Wendy's ex-husband? Instead, it's no, don't let Dad know about this bump thing that happened until we get a handle on it. To me, that's very different. And as I said, it seems to indicate that he was already aware of this plot. Next, we move to Dolce Vita. This is a restaurant where Charlie and Katie McBanois meet again to discuss the bump. Charlie is trying to figure it out. He's trying to calm people down and plan what the next move is going to be. And I wanted to be sure to establish that's what happened in this conversation at this point in the timeline. It'll become important later when we talk about Harvey and Charlie talking. So Dolce Vita happens on April 20th. The very next day, on April 21, in the evening, Charlie and his father, Harvey, had dinner together at the Matsuri restaurant. A recording of this conversation was captured in which Charlie is referring to the bump, Harvey displays knowledge of it, and of Charlie's conversations with Katie McBanois. Let's look at a couple of portions of that conversation. And again, I really want to emphasize when this happened. On April 20th, Charlie and Donna are discussing the bump. Charlie meets at Dolce Vita with Katie McBanois, and they have that highly incriminating conversation. That was a big piece of evidence in Charlie's trial. The very next day, Charlie and Harvey meet, and they're talking about the bump, in my opinion, just as the other co-conspirators were. Here's a line from Harvey. "I was surprised they didn't come to me." Here's another line from Harvey. Let me set it up with Charlie first. "One or the other, but the woman is usually the weaker choice. You know, someone that's going to give in. So it is what it is." Then Harvey says, "That's what Katie agreed with you." So again, in my opinion, when I'm reading this, Harvey's talking to Charlie about the bump, just as the other co-conspirators did. And now he's referencing the conversation Charlie had at Dolce Vita with Katie. So Harvey knows Katie is involved in these conversations. I think it shows he knows Katie's involved in this whole thing. And even though they're being careful with their words here, I think this looks really bad. Here's another interaction that I feel shows Harvey's knowledge of this whole thing. They had to send, listen, if they asked you a question, yes or no, someone's going to say no. So there has to be some kind of tactic to come into, where it's like, and then Harvey says, "It makes sense. It really does. I didn't think they were that smart." The very next day, on April 22nd, Charlie speaks to Donna on the phone and asks, "Did Dad tell you what I spoke to him about?" For me, this indicates that all three were involved in the same conversational thread. So I'm referring to Charlie, Donna, and Harvey. I could have said all four and included Katie in that as well. When you map it out like this, April 20th, Charlie talks to Donna about the bump, and then Charlie meets with Katie at Dolce Vita. April 21st, Charlie meets with his father at Matsuri, and they have that conversation. And then April 22nd, Charlie talks to Donna again and asks, "Did Dad tell you what I spoke to him about?" And when you look at the full transcript of the April 22nd conversation, you can see that it's clear as day what Charlie and Donna are speaking about. They're speaking about the bump. They're well-established co-conspirators, and Harvey is part of the same conversational thread, in my opinion. Then we have the follow-up to the bump I'm calling the letter. On April 25th, a letter was dispatched to Harvey and Donna Adelson, sent via USPS by investigators. And then we've got some discussion over WhatsApp between Charlie and Katie, where Charlie says he directs Katie to Harvey and Donna's building for a meeting. He informed her that he was discussing everything with his parents. In other words, Harvey is in the know. We have another follow-up to the bump called the text. So this one happens later. We're at May 4th now. It's 2:09 in the morning, and Donna receives a text message from the undercover agent on her cell phone. Now this one is really significant because the very next day, on May 5th, Charlie arrives at the Icon. That's where Donna and Harvey live. And he met them by the pool area to discuss the text message. They chose a secluded corner area for privacy, and no oral intercept was captured. So this is one of their outdoor conversations, and Harvey is involved in this one. He was surveilled, he was spotted, he is in the huddle with the co-conspirators. And I want to direct you to another picture, okay? This is, let me make sure it's showing up. This is one of those outdoor meetings between Donna and Charlie. This one happened early on after the bump. It could have been, April 20, 21st. I can't recall the exact date of this photo, but it's one of those early meetings. And yeah, this is their MO. They talk on the phone. They try to use code. Charlie told Donna, "Be careful what you're saying, in the apartment. Don't talk there." So they like to go outside in these locations so they know they can be sure that they're not heard, or I guess more sure. And this is exactly what went on at the Icon, and just put Harvey as the third person at that table. Moving on to arrests and revelations. So we've got Sigfredo Garcia arrested on May 25th. We got Luis Rivera apprehended on June 28th. I did highlight a statement from Garcia here where he elaborated on the way to committing the crime that a woman with 2 children wanted her ex-husband killed to gain full custody of the children in Miami. This one doesn't have to do with Harvey, but I think this is really powerful against Wendi, and it just got me thinking. I wonder if there's still more we might hear from Sigfredo. Moving on now to a section I'm calling Trials and Convictions. Wanted to highlight something that came up in one of Katie's trials. During the trial, Meg Banawa testified, revealing that Charlie had informed her Donna Adelson had just left his residence, presumably with Harvey, when Meg Banawa arrived on the night of the homicide. Now, I added that in. I think it's completely fair to say that there really isn't any evidence to show directly that Harvey was at the money drop. What I'm hoping is that if Harvey is ever arrested and a probable cause affidavit does surface, they have some kind of cell phone information that can show that. I think it's reasonable to assume that he was, but I agree. I would love something stronger to put in a document like this. And then the final section of this mock affidavit, the planned escape. So I put a couple of things here. I did put a reference to some of these new jail calls, these hot mic moments from Donna, one of which where she talked about potentially committing suicide with Harvey. So for me, this is that suicide pact that I think is implied, but also pretty darn clear from Donna herself, where the plan is to take some pills, go to sleep, and then, they'll find us. Of course, that didn't end up happening. On November 7th, 2023, Donna and Harvey booked flights to Vietnam. So this was their escape plan. As we know, Donna was captured at the airport, arrested, and now she prepares to stand trial. So that is the mock affidavit that I created. And like I said, I've linked this in the video description if you want to take a look at it. Open the table of contents, take in the whole story and keep a mind on where Harvey fits into this whole thing. And, ask yourself, would they have probable cause? Do you think they do? Could they make an arrest of Harvey? Okay, and now on to the bonus resource. So what I've created using an app called Tableau, which, by the way, I'm a little rusty in, so I'm sorry if this isn't like the most fantastic resource you've ever seen, but I think it does the trick. I've created what I'm calling a crime line, and I've included most of the major events. This is certainly not exhaustive, but it does include most of the major events, and what I've really done here is focused on the items where I feel Harvey was involved, just to kind of show that, just to sort of depict where he pops out as we go through this timeline. This is also linked in the description of the video if you want to open it up and check it out. Let me briefly talk about how you can interact with this resource, because it is interactive, which I thought was pretty cool. So first of all, you can simply, let's just talk about scrolling first. So it does scroll. I don't want you to think this is the whole timeline that you're looking at. There's more below. You can also hover over any individual item. And what happens is you get the month and day highlighted on the left, and you get a little pop-up like a tooltip, and it tells you date, time, if I could find it, or if it's applicable, and who I feel was involved. The other thing to keep in mind is all of these line up with a year beneath. Okay, so you can see the year under here. Gets a little easier to see that when you have like a longer list of events. You can see those line up with 2014 quite well. The other thing I wanted to show you is there are some filters on the side. So if you want to just see, events in 1 year, you can just deselect all and just pick like 2014. Just give it a second, and then you can see those events come up. Okay, these are all from 2014. And I can hover over those and get information. Once again, you'll see the year right here. It's the only year showing up, and you see all the events that line up there. So that's kind of cool. The other thing you can do is, let's see just the items where Harvey was involved. So I just click that. And now my timeline just shows Harvey's involvement, which we're going to talk about, once I walk through this. Okay, so those are the basics. Let's do a quick run through of this timeline. Now that I've gone through the affidavit, I thought this would be really nice to kind of like pull the whole thing together. And it's something we can really look at. So first things first, in 2012, Wendi initiates the divorce, and I'm kind of counting this point on our timeline as all the events surrounding that divorce, including her, abandonment of Dan when he was away on a trip. Her family literally shows up with moving trucks. They take allegedly half the furniture, scoop up the kids. She leaves divorce papers on the bed and heads out of town. According to Tamara Demko, this was a family operation. This had to have been planned. It was definitely executed. And I marked this as Harvey being involved because, the family clearly was. Moving on, we're in May of 2013, and we've got the start of Donna's crazy emails. By the way, if you ever want to take a look at them, there's at least 4 of them shared on a webpage. You can just Google Donna Adelson emails, and it's like the second result, I think. And they're easily clickable, and you can read the whole thing if you want to see those. But the first one that I saw was sent May 3rd, 2013. Not long after that, in June, we've got Judge Hobbs rejecting the relocation request. And just 7 days later comes another one of Donna's crazy emails with that $1 million offer. By the way, I should have been clear. I'm including Harvey as being involved in these because, these were sent from their joint email account. So many might argue with that, but it's a joint email account. His name's on it. All of them were signed mom and dad. So I think it's reasonable to assume that Donna and Harvey were having discussions before those emails were sent. And so to me, it's got his sign off on it. I included him on the relocation request rejection because I think it's pretty clear that Harvey was right there with the rest of the family in wanting Wendi to move to South Florida with the kids. So this would have been a big blow to him as well. And of course, he's part of the $1 million offer. He was, part of that 1/3. He was sharing his part with Donna. August of 2013, I hope I'm getting this right. This is when Jeff testified that Wendi told him Charlie was looking into hiring a hitman, and she was, dead serious about it. Now we're in 2014. We're in May, and just kind of watch how this year plays out. It's a little spooky, actually, when you look at it on a timeline. We've got Dan's motion to prohibit unsupervised visits between Donna and the children. And the reason he did this is because he overheard her bad-mouthing him to the kids on a call. And also the kids even reported that to Dan, that Donna was making disparaging marks about him. So he sets this motion up on May 15th, unsupervised visits. And then not long after that, sometime in June, I couldn't find an exact date for this, but I just put in June, the first attempt at the murder occurs. It was unsuccessful, but just look at those two events next to each other. The motion to prohibit in May, and then the very next month, the first attempt at the murder. You can kind of feel the urgency on Donna's side, in my opinion. In the next month, July, Sigfredo's phone makes contact with Harvey's 2 times. July 11th, remember, the murder happens on the 18th. So a week before, Donna sets the TV repair appointment for Wendi. 4 days later, the Prius is rented in Miami. 2 days after that, July 17th, the killers arrive in Tallahassee. You can see how quickly all of this is moving. And then we're at the day of the murder, okay? In the morning, Donna texts Wendi that the Best Buy guy from the Geek Squad is on their way. At around 10:55 a.m., Dan Markel is murdered. About an hour and a half after that, so somewhere around 12:30, let's see what I have here. Yeah, Wendi drives right up to the crime scene on Trescott. This is, by the way, something that she has been inconsistent about, and in my opinion, has lied about. Very significant. Police find her at a lunch with friends, and she goes in for her first and only interview. This is where she indicates that, she indicates herself that her parents were very angry at Markel. That night is when, again, we're around like 7 p.m. Donna texts Charlie, "Call us ASAP." She refers to it as us. So I believe Harvey is right there with her. And then later on at around 9 p.m., Donna texts to Charlie, "Outside your house." This is for the drop. Donna, and in my opinion, likely Harvey, are at Charlie's for about an hour and a half. They leave, and not long after that, Katie arrives at Charlie's residence. While she's there, Donna and Harvey are driving into the late hours of the night. They arrive in Orlando at around 1:25 in the morning. They go to sleep, probably with the assistance of Xanax. And at around 9:45 in the morning on the 19th, Katie leaves Charlie's residence, and Charlie has put the money in her trunk at that point. And this is the money that Donna and likely Harvey brought over. So Katie leaves, and she coordinates the payments with Sigfredo and Luis. So she's basically figuring out how she's going to take this big bag of money and divvy it up between those responsible. Sometime likely in the late morning, Donna and Harvey finally arrive in Tallahassee. They are in town for the memorial service of Dan Markel, but in my opinion, more so to enact the plan of getting Wendi and the kids down to South Florida as they've always wanted. So they attend the memorial service on the 20th, and the Tallahassee PD approaches them about an interview. The very next day, they call Wendi Adelson and ask the same thing. They would like a second interview. Both Wendi and her parents completely blow off investigators, and they return to South Florida with the children. That's July 22nd, so just days after the memorial service. Not long after that, so we're just into August, that is when Katie makes a deposit in her bank account of $13,000. Just a month after that, Katie begins receiving the checks from the Adelson Institute. And we're in September, so this is around the time that school is beginning. And this is where Wendi starts to use the Adelson last name for the children. So that's soon after the crime was committed. She says this is because it was out of fear, and she wanted to protect the children because the Markel name was all over the media. And at that time, the Adelson name really wasn't. I did a video on this proving that that's just not true. I examined a lot of major media outlets, even smaller publications or medium-sized. I looked internationally, and the Adelson name was all over those articles, which to me shows that the Adelson name was in the media. In fact, Wendi's picture was repeatedly used in a lot of this coverage. And this is just coverage on web pages too. You can imagine what the coverage was on YouTube and on television. So if you want to check out that video, it's titled something like "Debunking One of Wendi's Most Annoying Lies." Next, we move to 2015. Sometime around May, I think, is when she applied to have the names changed. And I've got it in July as, that's when the official change happened. Wendi said that it happened about a year after the murder. So I might not be perfect here, but around this time, that's when the name change was legal. And then we move to 2016. So I've got a number of items here. So first of all, the Lexus title in January, that's when that was transferred over to Katie. So this is Harvey's Lexus. Then we have the bump, which we spoke about. And we've got in-person discussions of the bump. And I've listed Dolce Vita here where, Charlie talks to Katie about it. Very incriminating conversation. And then the very next day, we've got the Matsuri meeting between Charlie and Harvey. And I walked you through that transcript that, in my opinion, clearly shows Harvey is comfortable in this conversation. He knows what's going on. He even knows that Katie is part of the conversations. The next day, on the 22nd, Charlie acknowledges talking to Harvey about the bump. He's speaking with Donna. And this is why I like the visual timeline so much, because you can see these three events, how close they are in time, how they connect with each other, and then you've got the transcripts. I think it just keeps getting more and more powerful in showing that Harvey had knowledge and, in my opinion, likely involvement in this whole thing. Then we've got the letter and we've got the text, and these are the two powerful follow-ups to the bump. The text is what triggers the in-person meeting at the Icon, and of course that involved Harvey. By the way, I'm saying that the letter that was sent and the text involve Harvey. Well, the text is a no-brainer because after that happens, Harvey's at one of these in-person huddle-ups. But I gave him involvement in the letter because I've already established his knowledge here in these three events. So it makes no sense that, the letter would be hidden from him. It came to their house, and even if Donna opened it up, I think it's reasonable to assume that it's something she would have spoken to him about. So we've got the in-person meeting at the Icon, Donna contacting the undercover agent, and then we've got some arrests happening. This is the official connection to the Adelson family being established. This was on June 2nd of 2016 from what I read. We've got some arrests of Luis Rivera, Katie, and then we move all the way to 2022. Sadly, there were some years in there that hopefully the Adelsons were not enjoying. But here's where Charlie gets arrested. And then in 2023, Charlie is convicted. And then I've listed the suicide pact, the booking of flights to Vietnam, which I'm going to trademark. I've heard some people using that out there. And then, of course, we've got Donna being arrested at the airport on November 13th. So I think that's a pretty usable crime line. Like I said, of course, there's more things that we could add to this, and I think I probably will, because if we have a really robust, complete timeline that, we, meaning you and I, can use, we can use it in a lot of different ways. I can format it in different ways. I can change the focus. Like we could do one for Wendi to kind of visualize and track her involvement alongside these events. And one last thing I wanted to do, especially after going over the affidavit and going over this crime line, now that you've absorbed this information, let's just zoom out and take a look at this. So I've highlighted events where I feel Harvey was involved in orange, okay? And to be fair, right off the bat, some of these events, not all of these are indicators of, potential guilt. For instance, arriving in Orlando. I've just sort of put that on the timeline as something that happened. But I will say a lot of this stuff does look pretty bad, okay? So most of it is, things that an innocent person shouldn't be or wouldn't want to be involved in. Let's just take a look at the timeline overall, and you can see that it's just spattered with orange, okay? And this is why I have felt he's all over this thing. He's there. He is present. He's just quiet. And just because he's quiet, I don't think we should let that be an effective tactic or allow him to get away with anything. In my opinion, I just think he's way too involved. I think he's knowledgeable. There's no discussion, no communications that I've seen between family members trying to figure out how they're going to reveal there was a murder plot to kill Dan Markel. And if you want to say, like, maybe Charlie duped him, like he tried to dupe a jury with this extortion thing, I just think there's too much other information for that to make sense. I'm happy to have that discussion with people, but I'm not really going to go over that in this video because I just don't think that's a strong argument. Just my opinion. So yeah, you can just sort of see it when you look at this timeline. And another thing I'll do, it's what I did at the beginning to kind of show you how to use these filters. But this is sort of how I've mapped his knowledge and potential involvement across the crime line. Okay, team, that's it for today. I want to thank you so much for watching if you stuck around to this point. And I also want to hear what you thought about the mock affidavit. Do you think I got it close? Is that what it might look like if it comes to an arrest? And I definitely love to hear what you thought about the timeline. Was it impactful? Did anything I presented today change your mind? Or do you think the evidence against Harvey is still too flimsy for an arrest? If you like the content, hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to the channel. And remember to always watch out for the quiet ones. See you in the next video.